Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at Brevant.com/wins.
And welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Roque with Matt Bennett of agmarket.net after the big January data dump from USDA, and everything's lower and nothing was bullish in the report. Matt, let's start off talking about corn, probably the biggest shock here. Let's talk about the increase in yield and especially production, 17 billion bushels. That is huge.
Oh, that's just a massive crop, 86 and 186 and a half for yield. You took harvested acres up, really didn't do a whole lot with planted acres. So it looks like the, percentage of harvested acres went up somewhat. And then, a lot of us felt like in the industry, of course, the average trade guess was for a lower yield, that maybe they would dial back demand just a little bit to offset that. And then you'd still end up with around a 2 billion bushel type carry. But the reverse was actually the case. You take production up, and then, of course, you took demand up just a little bit. And it wasn't where we thought it was going to be if there was going to be a demand increase. Obviously, exports have just been nothing short of incredible so far. As far as sales are concerned, we've actually had good shipments as well, but no, you left exports at 3.2, and then you actually took up feed and residual usage from 6.1 to 6.2. So, yeah, I mean, the report, Michelle, as far as corn was concerned, global production's higher, global carryouts up at 290. We went up a little over 11 million metric tons. You'd have to look awfully hard to find something that you would call even mildly supportive. It's just not there.
Matt, from what you know, do you believe that we had a 186.5 yield with all of the production issues, southern rust, everything else that we threw at farmers?
I struggle with that yield, but clearly, since they were able to pull stocks in, they must feel pretty confident about their number. Of course, last year, you dropped yield 4 bushel. A lot of people, of course, with recency bias and with all the issues that you just mentioned, felt like they could take this yield down a fair amount. And so I would say it was definitely a shock for most people. I mean, there's no question in my mind that when you're in this position here, you're really going to struggle to be able to rally this market anytime soon. Yes, usage has been good, exports have been good, but at the same time, we've got a whale of a corn crop and total production, 18.5 billion, somewhere in that neighborhood. We got a lot of corn to chew through over the next few months.
Yeah, that is true. And then we're going to plant another big corn crop right after that, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm afraid so, Michelle. I mean, whenever November beans were up in that 11 and a quarter, 11:30 ball game, we felt like there was a decent chance a lot of people that were cash strapped, which would include a lot of us that are growing. Bottom line is you'd think maybe some people would kind of switch some acres over, or at least where they were heavy corn last year. Definitely, we all know that the Corn Belt was essentially every state was heavy as far as corn acres were concerned, because most states were down on soybean planting. So we felt like there could be a pretty decent little switch. Anytime you see a huge acreage number like this, the following year, you'll see some of that switching going on. But at this stage of the game, it sure sounds to me like, just from the people we talk to, in the seed industry, fertilizer industry, that you're still going to see big corn acres. I don't expect 98.7 by any stretch of the imagination coming up, but I think if you have 94 or 5 million acres, which is pretty much where my head's at right now, that's too many acres. I mean, that's all there is to it, if you're wanting to see some life in this corn market anytime soon.
Just a quick follow-up question on exports. It's hard to believe that they didn't make any adjustment upward in exports on corn, considering export inspections this morning now total 61% ahead of a year ago. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think there's a large contingency of people that feel that this is a front-loaded program. We heard that last year, though, too. We heard it's a front-loaded program. It's really going to back off, whereas corn exports just kept right on churning along throughout the year. I'd be a little bit hesitant to think that we can carry this pace by any stretch of the imagination. A couple of things concern me a little bit. World feed grain stocks are plentiful. You look at wheat. Obviously, we've got plenty of wheat in the world. With that being the case, there could be some substitution here and there, but bottom line, we've got plenty. And so, yeah, I was surprised that maybe they didn't adjust it a little bit higher, but at the same time, I kind of understand what they're doing there. I think if we end up at a 3.2 or better, by all means, that's just going to be a phenomenal number, and hopefully that's something that comes to pass. I mean, we need it to at this stage.
Negative reaction here from a price perspective. We dropped below the bottom side of the trading range that we've been in corn. Now, where do we project to?
Yeah, I mean that's problematic for sure. So, we had a pretty good wedge pattern that we'd built in, and we knew we were going to break out of that at some point. Do you go back and test some of the old lows? I think it'd be pretty tough to argue against that at this stage. You've got to have some sort of a story, whether it's a weather effect, whether it's something coming out of the 45C. I don't know for corn, what we might see. I mean, maybe there'd be a big push for E15, but that's not going to fix all of our problems right away. But by all means, you could take this March corn back down into that 420 level. I'm afraid as we move through here. I think more problematic for me, is what December 26th corn trades like moving forward. I mean, you do have February coming up where most people set their crop insurance price, and 470 last year with last year's inputs didn't work for most of us, assuming average yields. Whereas this year our input costs are actually higher than a year ago. And if you're going to attack a 450 type spring insurance price versus 26 corn, that's a major problem. And so I've got a lot of problems with the way this thing's playing out, and it certainly makes me question what 26 is going to look like, because 3 straight years of pretty tough profit margins and negative in most cases this past year, that doesn't work very well. We really need to see a turnaround at some point, and with these numbers it's pretty hard to see one.
Absolutely. Okay, soybeans yield left unchanged at 53 bushels per acre. But let's talk about what USDA made in terms of adjustments for Brazil's crop up and our ending stocks up as well.
Yeah, I mean, so our ending stocks, essentially, there were some minor changes other than exports, but exports went down 60 million bushels. You've got to assume it's because USDA took that Brazil crop up to 178. It's something that I think they were kind of laggard in doing, and it's almost like, hey, let's just throw all the bearish stuff we can at everybody here in January. But I'll tell you what, look at the balance sheet for soybeans. 350 is not the end of the world, but 290 type number certainly sounds a heck of a lot better. You go up to 350 and all of a sudden you're looking at, hey, the grower's probably going to plant a few more beans this year. Yeah, we said they're going to plant a lot of acres of corn, but not as many as last year. So where those acres going to go? Probably soybeans. And you've got to assume that cotton acres might be down a little, rice acres. And I know those are smaller crops, but it all adds up. And so with that being the case, if you end up with 84 or 5 million acres of soybeans and you're carrying in a 350 type number, that's also problematic. So there's no question that whenever you add up all these numbers for the report on beans, it was no picnic either.
I almost feel like it could have been more bearish, a 1.575 billion bushel export figure. It could have been lower than that, considering exports and inspections are running, over 30% behind last year. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no question that they could have taken a little more wind out of that sail. But at the same time, I feel like they probably done enough damage for now. They probably were looking at numbers that they kind of wanted to stay within. I mean, people always ask about those feed and residual usage numbers, and sometimes those get toyed with, and you can't just say that's only a feed number. And so the residual probably comes into place here, and it's kind of like their fudge factor. And so, yeah, I think exports could have been taken down just a little bit more as well. You've got a big crop coming out of Brazil. Let's be real. I mean, this is probably going to be another record crop, and if that's the case, then, I think that our exports probably are going to really struggle to get into this ballpark that we're at right now. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a struggle.
Yeah, USDA at 178. A lot of the private estimates are over 180 on Brazil already. What does this mean for price, Matt, especially since, are we going to take out those October lows, do you think? We're not very far from them now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it certainly is a possibility. I mean, are you going to go down to 10 and under? Those numbers are not that hard to fathom at this point. I know that that sounds like an absolute death blow for most of us. There's no question that it's not fun to think about, but at the same time, you look at the supply and demand, and you really you're going to have a hard time making a bullish case here. Whenever you look at world stocks, they're not. I wouldn't say they're burdensome. Last year, a year ago now, I would say 15 months ago, we were looking at ending stocks for world in the 130s, and we've kind of pared that back a little bit. Yes, usage has been awfully strong, even with a massive Brazilian crop. We've been able to keep those numbers in the low 120s. Now we're up here at 124. It's not the end of the world, but at the same time, Michelle, it's not like we're going to run out of beans anytime soon. So, Chinese demand is certainly going to be called into question. How many hogs they're feeding is certainly another question that you're going to have moving forward. And are they going to be able to be counted on, to be able to buy as many bean products, soybean meal and soybeans? And, I think the question there is probably that they won't. And so my issue with the bean deal, you're going to have big production again out of the U.S. if we have any type of weather. So, huge production out of Brazil. Argentina is the only place that there's question marks still. There's some weather issues there, but whenever you look at the scope of the Brazilian crop, it's not as important to people as if Brazil was just having an average type crop.
Yeah. And 25 million metric tons, quite frankly, from China next year seems a little bit unfathomable, or even for this year. I guess we're into 26 now. Okay, so let's talk about wheat. We didn't get a lot of adjustments there. Ending stocks up a little bit. The big thing that sticks out to me, winter wheat acres, 33 million acres, down just 1%. As poor as prices are, does that seem too high? Did that go to, is that pasture, or not pasture, but was that grazing area, or what happened there?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, we and a lot of people felt like wheat acres were going to be down a little bit more than what they were. As you suggested, wheat prices aren't exactly something that any of us want to hang our hat on and say, hey, this is a good looking crop to plant. Clearly, nothing works right now is the unfortunate reality. And wheat certainly would probably lead the case there. And so a little bit surprised as overall, there's not a whole lot of adjustments, but the fact remains that the U.S. has got plenty of wheat. The world's got plenty of wheat. And so whenever you add all these things together, it's pretty tough to, talk about any sort of a rally type potential in the wheat market. I've seen in my career times when wheat kind of leads us out of the doldrums and corn and beans follow along. But I'll tell you what, without someone in the world that's a major player having a major weather issue moving forward, I just don't foresee that kind of scenario unfolding.
Yeah, good point. And global stocks were up another 3 million metric tons. So that really speaks to your point there. All right. Thanks so much for your analysis. As always, that's Matt Bennett of agmarket.net and Markets Now.
You were right.
You were right.
You were right.
Well, you were right. When you choose your seed brand, there's winning, and then there's...
You were right. Should have gone with Brevant seeds.
When you choose Brevant seeds, you don't just win, you get to be right. Don't just win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/win to get started.